Hi everyone. My name is Dr. Wilkie Josh Thompson. I'm doing physician training third year in Aston Med City, affiliated with the Royal College of Physicians. So I had some time during the COVID time, so I thought I'll prepare some important on some topics and have some general discussion and such. So I'm into this. I'm particularly interested in endocrinology, and some main topic for them is diabetes. So I would be discussing some important topics. I'm very much sure that everyone is very familiar with many topics in diabetes. Mainly, we'll be discussing of type 1 and type 2 today. So, if there is any shortcomings or any mistakes, to point it out and let me know in the comment box below. So, okay. We'll just be going through a basic general information of the two type of diabetes, then the epidemiology and how much burden is it for the entire population. Then we'll just go to how is to give to do and I to have an idea how glucose is really synthesized in the body. Then how is glucose actually maintained? How is it? How the body maintains glucose when it's high and when it's low in the body? So I'm really sure that everyone knows it. So, but I just wanted to have a general outlook of mine as such. So as you know that we'll be discussing about two types of diabetes, type 1 and type 2. There is many other diabetes, mainly mature onset diabetes, mainly in young, then this gestational diabetes and all. And so we'll be elaborately talking about the types of diabetes in another class. So I'll be focusing on type 2, type 1 and type 2 for now. So, as you know, what is type 1? Type 1 basically means there is the body doesn't produce that much insulin as the body requires. Body mainly the organ pancreas. So, as a definition, you can say that a type 1 means autoimmune destruction of the cells, insulin producing beta cells in the pancreas. What is type 2? Mainly, you see that the pancreas produces insulin, but the problem is the body is insensitive to the insulin produced. So we can actually define it as reduced sensitivity of the insulin and inability of the produced insulin to overcome the insulin resistance. So in type 1, there is no production or the production is hampered. In type 2 there is production, but body is not reacting to the insulin. So I think you have an idea about that. So as you know, when do you call a patient is having diabetes? So generally, I'm not going to the nice guidelines. I'll be talking about that. There is a session for that, to how to diagnose whether it is diabetes with the nice guidelines and all. Generally, according to the World Health Organization, anyone with a random blood glucose of 11.1 millimoles per liter and a fasting glucose of 7 millimoles per liter, and with a 2-hour post glucose of 11.1, where you give glucose challenge. The glucose challenge basically is you give a significant amount of glucose to the patient, and after 2 hours you actually measure, and you see the level of glucose very high. That means there is no much insulin produced to synthesize that much amount of glucose. So the glucose level will be very high. So that is how it's like you challenge something, but that body doesn't produce something to counter challenge it. So then when you test something which you gave as a challenge becomes more. Okay, so that is actually, so with that you can conclude that there is a deficiency of the insulin, and you can bring it to this definition as such. And generally talking, the diabetes is a very common condition, particularly in India. It is also in even Scandinavian countries, particularly Finland and all. The cases per lakh is very high over there. That is mainly type 1. It's more than 60 per 1 lakh, because in India, China and all, the population is very high, and the density is very high. It's probably zero point 0.1 per lakh, but till zero point 0.1 per lakh, till it's a very big population, and where a country has almost billions of population, so it's a very big number, and it's a very huge burden to the health sector also. Mainly, it is almost calculated by WHO that it almost takes almost 12%. Okay, that 12% of the health budget. So, as you know, it is a very important, what do you say, condition, and proper treatment, proper care, and proper follow up is needed for this. Okay, so like. So I will just give you a general to say. I know that every medical student and physician knows about it. It's a very common topic. We have even reached to very high fifth or sixth generation medications with insulin pump medications, even insulin meter dose pumps and all. Everything is there, but just for a common man to understand what is this condition, how it is produced, what is insulin, what is glucagon, does pancreas has both only this function, or is there any function, and do you need medicines only to control this one? Can you bring some what do you call, lifestyle changes? So I'll just highlight some of them. So we'll be just discussing about a small discussion on pancreas, then basically glucose, how is glucose synthesized, then how the body maintains glucose, when it goes up, how what is produced to counterbalance it, when it goes down, what is produced to counterbalance it, and liver. Everyone thinks that pancreas is the only important organ in controlling your sugar. No, liver is also very important, and it is almost comes as important as pancreas. So I'll just give you some functions what the liver does to counterbalance the changes in glucose in your blood. So basically, pancreas is the organ that produces insulin. It is mainly the islet cells, and when you go number roughly, there is almost 1 to 1.2 billion islet cells in the pancreas. So basically, it has an exocrinic. Exocrinic means it's directly, what do you say? The pancreas goes into the ducts, and it goes directly to the what do you call? It's a very short term. It has ducts, and it directly has an action on the body. So while endocrine, they don't have ducts and all. So endocrine mainly it is hormones. Okay, so that is what it is the islet cells, the beta islet cells basically, which produces insulin, and there is another what do you call that, glucagon. Okay, so glucagon, I'll be talking about that, because glucagon actually increases your sugar when you go like in your body, when you have a low sugar, when your body goes into hypoglycemia and all. Glucagon helps you. When your sugar goes up, it's insulin that it is. So what a wonderful body you have. You can balance and counterbalance with God has created in that way. Okay, so what happens, like, so when you take glucose, so basically glucose goes to the cells, There is a major pathway, that is GLUT1 and GLUT2 pathway, where it enters the cell, where it undergoes glycolysis. Undergoes oxidative phosphorylation, where what happens is the glucose is oxidized and it becomes a form that it can be used as energy. So, Major, as you know that you know what is the energy source of a cell? That's a mitochondria. So, mitochondria instantaneously it what do you call changes this glucose into ATP, and that ATP means adenyl triphosphate, and that's the energy source. Okay, what do you call? So, that is a building block of energy, and this energy is used by the body cells for this function. And basically, when you have when you don't have food on the right time, you skip food, and when you don't have a correct supplements at the time, you try to be a bit drowsy or not. It is because the what do you call, the tissues are not getting that much sugar and energy cells. Okay, mainly the brain cells. So, once you stop carbohydrates or reduce carbohydrates, you try to feel very lethargic. That's not because you don't have other nutrients to support it, but it's because carbohydrates it's a very high source of glucose. So when brain doesn't get glucose, it tries to feel very tired and all. But the body has its counter mechanisms to actually counterbalance it. So I'll be talking about that, certain ketones and all. So I'll be talking about that. So you must have understood. So glucose is taken from the food. It's utilized by the cell. It goes through that GLUT1, GLUT2, where it goes to the GLUT1, GLUT2 pathway, where it undergoes an oxidative phosphorylation. Glucose is produced. Glucose is converted to ATP. ATP is utilized by the body cells. So it goes in that way. So basically, then how I'll be talking on how this glucose is actually utilized in the body, basically. And as you know that the organ that needs the maximum amount of glucose is particularly the central nervous system. It's like what do you call, when you on the when you on the car, your engine needs the maximum fuel. Okay, so engine needs to burn and it sends that energy to the rest of the parts. So that engine, you can say that is central nervous system, so it utilizes maximum amount of glucose. So when you reduce your glucose intake, or when you try to do this keto diet and all, that's I'll be talking about that. When you reduce carbohydrates and all, suddenly your brain reacts to it, and you feel very tired. You don't feel to do anything, very lethargic and all. So that is the basic what do you call basic reason for it. Okay. So, what to say is that a brain needs a continuous supply of oxygen, and the other point is, you might think, if brain needs continuous, the problem with brain is it cannot store oxygen. Okay, it cannot store glucose. Okay, so that storing activity is done by the liver. Okay, now you get to why liver is very important. So liver stores their glucose as glycogen. It's like a storage pump. So when a car has a reserve fuel, okay, so once the fuel in the normal tank is used by the engine, then you see a red light indicating that your reserve is on, and there is only this much amount of fuel left, and before that you will go and fill. So same like that, once the body, the brain, particular brain cells and all the cells utilize what is in the blood. Then the liver starts producing from the glycogen it has stored. Glucose is stored as a storage form as glycogen in the liver. So there is a lot of things like how is glycogen stored, and how this glycogen which is stored, how it helps in the producing triglycerides, which is your part of your lipid cholesterol and all that. So I'll be talking about that also in the next class. And so basically what I wanted to say is that this central nervous system depends on your liver for glucose supply. So liver has to break down the glycogen, supply oxygen to the brain and other parts of the body. Again, when you take glucose or carbohydrates and meal, suddenly the production reduces. It depends on that energy source. Once that energy source decreases, then body comes back for this reserve. Okay, so that is how it functions. Okay, yeah. So just a brief this of that. It's type 1, type 2. Type 1, where this one insulin is not produced. Basically, it is an autoimmune, a self-destructing of the beta cells over there. So insulin is not produced. Second, insulin is produced, but the cells don't recognize insulin, and it doesn't utilize that insulin. And it is insensitive to that. That is type 2. Then once the glucose is broken down, glucose comes to the blood cell, goes in that pathway, gets utilized by the mitochondria, which is the organelle of the organ of a cell, and ATP is produced. ATP, which is a form of energy, which is utilized by the body, and then this ATP is utilized continuously by the body, and this is also stored. Glucose is also stored like glycogen in the liver for more reserves if body needs. So once once the glucose in the body is utilized, it looks for the liver to again break down the glycogen, so that body gets continuous source of energy. The source of energy primarily, just symbolically, means glucose. Okay, there is other like protein, minerals, micro nutrients and all that, but primarily the glucose, you see he doesn't have more energy, means he particularly the fast burning energy source, that ATP is not there. So that is only for today. So this is my first video. So if I have any mistakes, you can tell. So next class I'll be discussing about mainly about cholesterol. How is cholesterol? Then how is this sugar regulated in our body? Okay. Then because once we know how it is regulated in our body, we'll come to understand how each medications act, which pathway, and how it blocks in each pathway. Then what is the action of insulins, different type of insulins. Then many lifestyle changes you can do. I've seen many people even bringing changes in their lifestyle, activities, exercise, and I'll be discussing about that, and even controlling the diabetes. So you don't need fully to depend on medications for such. So do see my video. I'll be coming with more topics in the 4 days, and I hope that you have had a small idea, or 5% idea about how glucose is utilized. Then so if I have any mistakes, you can comment in that comment box. Thank you.